Every trucker knows. The highway changes after midnight. The roads get darker. The silence gets heavier. And sometimes, something gets in. What you're about to hear are 10 true stories from drivers who encountered the unexplainable on America's most haunted highways. Phantom passengers, vanishing rest stops, voices on the CB that shouldn't exist. These aren't legends. They're logged, reported, and still happening. So before you hit that lonely stretch of interstate tonight, ask yourself, are you ready for what might be waiting in your mirrors? I've been a long-haul trucker for 17 years. I've driven every godforsaken stretch of highway this country has to offer, from the foggy coasts of Oregon to the sweltering back roads of Florida. I've seen it all, or at least I thought I had. It was a Tuesday night in late October when everything changed. I was hauling a load of industrial equipment from El Paso to Amarillo, taking Highway 62 through the absolute middle of nowhere, West Texas. The kind of road where you can drive for an hour without seeing another soul. No gas stations, no houses, just endless darkness, scrub brush, and the occasional armadillo stupid enough to cross your path. The clock on my dash read 2:47 a.m. I'd been driving for 6 hours straight, fueled by truck stop coffee and whatever classic rock the radio could pick up through the static. My eyes were heavy, but I was making good time. I planned to push through to Lubbock before catching some sleep. That's when I first noticed them. Headlights in my side mirror. Bright, close, too close for comfort on an empty highway at 3 in the morning. At first, I didn't think much of it. Another trucker, probably. Someone else trying to make their delivery window. I eased off the gas a bit, expecting them to pass. They didn't. They just stayed there, maybe 30 feet behind my trailer, matching my speed exactly. I tapped my brakes lightly. A trucker's way of saying, "Back off, buddy." The headlights didn't budge, didn't slow down, didn't create any more distance. They just hung there in my mirror like two unblinking eyes staring into my soul. "All right, jackass," I muttered, pressing down on the accelerator. My speedometer climbed from 65 to 70, then 75. The headlights stayed exactly where they were. Same distance, same intensity, like they were tethered to my rig by some invisible chain. I keyed up my CB radio. Channel 19 was usually crawling with chatter, even at this hour. "Breaker, breaker, this is Tombstone heading east on 62. Anyone out there got eyes on a vehicle behind me?" Static. I tried again. "Tombstone to any driver eastbound on Highway 62. I got somebody riding my bumper pretty hard. Can anyone confirm visual?" More static. Then finally, a voice crackled through. "This is Silverback. About 2 miles ahead of you, Tombstone. I got you on my radar. Don't see nothing else on this road but you and me, partner." I glanced at my mirror again. The headlights were still there, burning, unwavering. Silverback, that can't be right. I got headlights right on my 6. Has been for the last 10 miles. A pause. Then, "Tombstone, I'm looking at a completely empty road behind you. Ain't nothing there but darkness." My hands tightened on the wheel. My heart started doing this weird flutter thing it does when something feels very, very wrong. "Copy that, Silverback," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Tombstone out." I hung up the mic and forced myself to look in the mirror again. The headlights hadn't moved, hadn't blinked, hadn't done anything that actual headlights should do on a bumpy West Texas highway. That's when I noticed something else. Something that made my blood run cold. There was no vehicle, just the lights. 2 perfect circles of white light floating in the darkness behind my trailer. With no cab, no grill, no shape of any truck or car attached to them. Just lights, suspended in the void. I don't believe in ghosts. Never have. I'm a practical man. A man of diesel and asphalt and logbooks. But what I was seeing in that mirror violated every law of physics and common sense I'd ever known. My breath came shorter. My palms started sweating despite the cab's air conditioning. I did the only thing I could think of. I floored it. The engine roared. My speedometer needle swung past 80, climbing toward 85. The rig shook and rattled. My cargo groaned against the tie-downs. I pushed that truck harder than I'd ever pushed it. racing down that black ribbon of highway like the devil himself was on my tail. The headlights matched me, effortlessly. No engine noise, no roar of acceleration. They just kept pace exactly 30 feet behind, as if my speed meant nothing to them. I tried swerving into the left lane. The lights followed. I jerked back to the right. They stayed with me. It was like they were locked onto me, tracking my every movement with cold, mechanical precision. "What the hell do you want?" I screamed at the mirror, my voice cracking. The lights didn't answer. They just stared. I saw a sign flash by, "Truck stop, 15 miles. Thank God. Civilization. Witnesses. Other people who could see what I was seeing and confirm I wasn't losing my mind. I pushed harder, keeping my speed maxed out, my eyes darting between the road and those impossible lights in my mirror. The minutes crawled by like hours. My shirt was soaked with sweat. My jaw ached from clenching. Finally, I saw the glow of the truck stop on the horizon. Sodium lights. A beacon of safety in this nightmare. I took the exit ramp too fast, my trailer fishtailing slightly as I pulled into the lot. I slammed on the brakes and brought my rig to a stop near the fuel pumps. I sat there, engine idling, chest heaving, staring at my side mirror. The headlights had followed me off the highway. They were coming down the exit ramp now, slow and deliberate, pulling into the truck stop lot behind me. But as they entered the circle of light from the overhead lamps, I could see it clearly now. There was nothing there. No vehicle, no truck, no car. Just two beams of light, floating about 4 feet off the ground, moving through the empty air like they were attached to some invisible machine. They stopped 10 feet from my cab. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I just sat there, frozen, watching these phantom headlights hover in the parking lot, pointed directly at me. The lights were so bright I could feel the warmth of them through my windshield. They stayed there for what felt like an eternity. Maybe a minute, maybe 5. Time lost all meaning. Then, slowly, they began to fade. Not like someone turning off a switch, but like someone walking backward into fog. The intensity decreased, the beams growing dimmer and dimmer until they were just faint glows in the darkness. And then they were gone. I stumbled out of my cab, legs shaking, and nearly fell to the asphalt. The night air hit me like a slap. I stood there gulping it down, trying to convince myself I just experienced some kind of exhaustion-induced hallucination. The truck stop was mostly empty, just a couple of other rigs parked far across the lot, their drivers either sleeping or inside the diner. I walked on unsteady legs toward the main building, needing coffee, needing to be around other human beings, needing anything to ground me back in reality. Inside, a bored attendant in his 60s sat behind the counter, half watching a static-filled TV. I must have looked like hell because he took one look at me and asked, "You all right, buddy?" "Yeah, I swallowed hard. Can I see your security camera footage? For the parking lot." He raised an eyebrow. "Someone hit your rig?" "No, please. I need to see it." Something in my voice must have convinced him because he shrugged and pulled up the camera feed on a grainy monitor behind the counter. He rewound it to 5 minutes ago. I watched the footage, watched my truck pull into the lot, watched it come to a stop near the pumps. There was nothing behind me, no headlights, no lights at all, just my lone truck pulling into an empty parking lot. "See anything?" the attendant asked. I couldn't speak. I just shook my head. He gave me a long look, then said quietly, "You're the third driver this month to come in here looking spooked, all asking about the cameras, all saying they saw something following them that wasn't there." My mouth went dry. "What?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I've worked this stop for 20 years, and I'll tell you something. There's a stretch of Highway 62, between mile markers 140 and 170, where strange things happen. Drivers see lights, hear voices on dead CB channels. Some of them report seeing a whole phantom truck following them." "What is it?" I whispered. He shook his head slowly. "Nobody knows. Some folks say it's the ghost of a driver who died out there in the 80s. Fell asleep at the wheel, crossed the median, hit another truck head-on, killed himself and a family of 4. Some say his spirit still drives that road, looking for something. Others think it's just the desert playing tricks. Heat, mirages at night, atmospheric conditions, all that. This wasn't a mirage, I said firmly. No, he agreed, his eyes dark. I don't reckon it was. I bought a coffee I didn't drink and went back to my truck. Sat in the cab for an hour, doors locked, lights on, trying to process what had happened. Eventually, I called my dispatcher and told him I needed to change my route. He argued. I insisted. Finally, he relented. I took the long way to Amarillo, added 4 hours to my trip. Didn't care. I've been driving for 17 years, like I said. I've seen drunk drivers, blizzards, tornadoes, wildfires. I've had engines explode, brakes fail, and tires blow out at 70 miles per hour. But nothing has ever scared me like those headlights. I still drive at night. I still take long hauls across empty highways. But I don't take Highway 62 anymore. Not through that stretch between mile markers 140 and 170. And I never look in my mirrors after dark. Because sometimes, late at night when I'm alone on the road, I'll catch a glimpse of something in my peripheral vision. Just a flash of light. Just a hint of something following me. And I'll grip the wheel a little tighter, press the gas a little harder, and pray that whatever those lights are, they found someone else to haunt. But deep down, I know the truth. Once they've seen you, they never really leave. Highway 50 cuts through the heart of Nevada like a scar across dead skin. They call it the loneliest road in America. And brother, they're not lying. I've driven a lot of desolate highways in my 22 years behind the wheel, but there's something about Highway 50 that feels different. It's not just empty, it's abandoned. Like God himself looked at that stretch of desert and decided nothing should live there. It was mid-September when I took the job. Simple run, pick up mining equipment in Ely, deliver it to a site outside of Fallon. Straight shot across Highway 50. Should have been easy money. Should have been routine. I left Ely around 8 p.m., just as the sun was setting and painting the desert in shades of blood orange and purple. Beautiful in that hostile, alien way that Nevada desert can be. The temperature was dropping fast. It does that out there. 90 degrees at sundown, 40 degrees by midnight. I had the radio on for the first hour, but the stations faded to static one by one as I drove deeper into the emptiness. Eventually, I just turned it off and drove in silence, listening to the hum of my engine and the whisper of wind against the cab. That's when I first noticed him in my mirrors. A semi, black cab, no company logos, no identification markings, just a plain black truck with a single trailer, headlights on, maybe a quarter-mile back. I didn't think much of it at first. Another driver making a late-night haul, probably. But as the miles ticked by, 10, 20, 30 miles, he stayed there. Same distance. Never closer. Never farther. Just there. I watched my speedometer. I was doing 68. I eased up to 72. The black semi adjusted his speed, maintaining that exact quarter-mile gap. I slowed back down to 65. So did he. Weird. I muttered to myself. I tried the CB radio. Breaker 19. This is Rolling Thunder eastbound on Highway 50. Got a black semi about a quarter-mile behind me. Driver, you reading me? Nothing but static. I tried again. Black semi on Highway 50. You got your ears on? This is the driver ahead of you. Silence. The road stretched ahead of me, straight and empty, disappearing into darkness. I checked my mirrors again. The black semi was still there, headlights steady, following me like a shadow. For the next hour, he never wavered. Through curves, over hills, past the tiny town of Austin, population 192, he stayed exactly where he was. I started to feel a knot forming in my stomach. Something about this wasn't right. At mile marker 112, I saw the lights of a truck stop, Big D's Travel Plaza. I'd stopped there before. Good coffee, clean showers. Most importantly right now, other people. I signaled and pulled off the highway, watching my mirrors. The black semi's turn signal came on. He was following me off. All right, I said to myself. Let's see who you are. I pulled into the truck stop lot and parked near the entrance, where the overhead lights were brightest. I sat there for a moment, engine idling, watching my mirror as the black semi came down the exit ramp. He pulled into the lot and drove right past the pumps, past the parking spaces, all the way to the far corner of the lot where the lights barely reached. He backed into a spot and shut off his engine. But his headlights stayed on for a moment, pointed at me. Then they went dark. I waited, watched. The cab door should open any second now. The driver should climb out, stretch his legs, head inside for coffee or to use the restroom. 1 minute passed. 2 minutes. 5 minutes. The door never opened. Screw this, I said, and climbed out of my cab. The night air was cold and smelled like diesel and sagebrush. I could hear the distant hum of the highway and the buzzing of the sodium lights overhead. I walked across the lot toward the black semi, my boots crunching on gravel. As I got closer, I could see it more clearly. No company name, no DOT number, no license plate that I could make out. The cab was coated in a thin layer of desert dust, like it had been sitting somewhere for a long time. I knocked on the driver's door. Hey, you've been following me for 100 miles. You got a problem? No response. I tried the handle. Locked. I walked around to the passenger side, my heart starting to beat faster. I cupped my hands against the window and peered inside. The cab was empty. Completely empty. No driver. No sleeping bag. No logbook. No coffee cups or food wrappers or any of the clutter that accumulates in a working truck. The seats looked pristine, almost new. But the engine was still warm. I could feel heat radiating from the hood. What the hell? I whispered. I walked back around to the front. The hood was dusty, but when I touched it, it was definitely warm. This truck had been running minutes ago. I'd watched it drive into this lot. I'd seen it park. So where was the driver? I looked around the lot. There was nowhere to go. The truck stop building was 100 yards away. I would have seen someone walking toward it. The desert stretched out in all directions. Flat, open, with nowhere to hide. I walked quickly back toward the truck stop entrance, that knot in my stomach tightening into a fist. Inside, a sleepy-looking cashier was restocking cigarettes behind the counter. A couple of truckers sat in the attached diner, hunched over coffee and pie. I approached the cashier. Hey, did you see anyone come in from that black semi out there in the back corner? She looked up, confused. Black semi? Yeah, black cab, no logos. Parked in the back. She shook her head slowly. Mister, that truck's been sitting there for 2 days. Abandoned. We called it in to the state patrol, but they haven't come to tow it yet. The blood drained from my face. That's impossible. I just watched it follow me off the highway. I watched it drive into this lot and park 5 minutes ago. She gave me a concerned look. Sir, that truck hasn't moved. The engine's been cold since it showed up. We figured the driver ditched it for some reason. No, I said, my voice rising. No, that's not right. It was following me for over 100 miles. I saw it. Hey, easy. One of the truckers from the diner called over. You all right, buddy? I didn't answer. I just turned and walked back outside, my mind racing. The black semi sat in the corner of the lot, exactly where it had been. Silent, dark. I walked up to it again and touched the hood. Ice cold. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my cab with all the doors locked, lights on, staring at that black semi in the corner of the lot. It didn't move, didn't make a sound, just sat there like a corpse. At dawn, I started my engine and got the hell out of there. I didn't care about my delivery schedule anymore. I just wanted to put distance between myself and that truck stop. I merged back onto Highway 50 and pushed my rig to 75 miles per hour, my eyes constantly flicking to my mirrors. The road behind me was empty. Golden morning light spilled across the desert. Everything looked normal, peaceful even. I started to breathe easier. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe the isolation and the darkness had played tricks on my mind. Maybe the black semi appeared in my mirror. My heart stopped. It was back. Same distance, same position, quarter mile behind me, following me east like it had never stopped. "No!" I screamed, slamming my fist against the steering wheel. "This isn't real. You're not real." I grabbed my CB radio. "This is Rolling Thunder on Highway 50. Anyone, please respond. I have a vehicle following me. Can anyone confirm visual?" A voice crackled through, clear and calm. "Rolling Thunder, this is dispatch. We're tracking your GPS. You're the only vehicle on that stretch of highway. Repeat, you are alone on Highway 50. "That's not true," I shouted. "He's right behind me. Check the traffic cameras. Check satellite. He's right there. Rolling Thunder, we're looking at live satellite feed. You are the only truck on that road. Do you need us to contact medical services?" I threw the radio down and focused on driving. Just drive. Just get to Fallon. Get to civilization. Get away from this nightmare. The black semi followed me for another 60 miles. Through Austin, past Middlegate, all the way to the outskirts of Fallon, where Highway 50 finally starts to see regular traffic and actual towns. And then, as I merged onto the bypass near the Naval Air Station, I checked my mirror one last time. He was gone. I pulled over on the shoulder and sat there shaking for 20 minutes. Finally, I completed my delivery and drove straight home to Reno. Didn't stop. Didn't sleep. Just drove. When I got home, it was late afternoon. I parked in my driveway and practically fell out of the cab, exhausted and rattled. I just wanted a shower, a real bed, and about 12 hours of sleep. That's when I saw it. Tucked under my windshield wiper. Polaroid photograph. My hands trembled as I pulled it free and looked at it. It was me, sleeping in my cab. The photo was taken from outside the passenger window. I could see myself clearly, head tilted back against the seat, mouth slightly open, completely unconscious. The timestamp in the corner read 3:47 a.m. I remembered that time. I'd pulled over at a rest area outside of Austin at 3:30 a.m. for a quick 20-minute power nap. I'd been alone. The rest area was completely empty, or so I'd thought. I flipped the Polaroid over. Written on the back in neat, careful handwriting were 4 words. "I rode with you." I dropped the photograph. My legs gave out and I sat down hard on my driveway, staring at my truck, my home, my safe space that suddenly felt violated and contaminated. Something had been in my truck, had watched me sleep, had taken a photograph of me in my most vulnerable moment. And I'd never known. I called the police. They took a report. They took the photograph. They told me they'd investigate, but admitted they probably wouldn't find anything. "Probably just someone's sick idea of a prank," the officer said. But his eyes told me he didn't believe it either. I sold my truck 2 weeks later. Took a huge loss on it. Didn't care. I bought a new rig. Different make. Different color. Had it blessed by a priest, which earned me some weird looks at the dealership, but I didn't care about that either. The new owner of my old truck called me about a month later. His voice was shaky. He wanted to know if I'd ever seen anything strange while driving it. I asked him what he meant. There was a long pause. Then he said, "I keep finding Polaroids. Under the wipers. In the cab. They're pictures of me. Sleeping. Driving. Stopped at lights. There's one from yesterday that I found this morning. I was parked in my own garage. I didn't say anything. What could I say?" He kept talking, his voice rising with panic. "And last night, I swear to God, I saw a black semi in my rearview. It followed me for miles. But when I pulled over to confront the driver, there was nobody in the cab. Nobody. The engine was running, but..." I hung up. I haven't answered his calls since. Because here's the thing they don't tell you about Highway 50, about the loneliest road in America. You're never really alone out there. Something drives those empty miles. Something watches. Something follows. And once it picks you, it doesn't matter if you change trucks or change routes or even change careers. It knows where you live. It rode with you all the way home. I've been hauling freight across the Mojave Desert for 14 years. You'd think after all that time, nothing could surprise me anymore. I've dealt with blown tires in 120-degree heat, sandstorms that turn day into night, and breakdowns in places so remote that AAA laughs when you call them. But I'd never dealt with anything like what happened that night on I-15. It was late July, peak summer in the Mojave, which means the asphalt literally melts during the day. Smart truckers wait until sunset to make the run between Barstow and Las Vegas. The temperature drops, the highway patrol eases up, and you can make good time without your engine overheating every 50 miles. I left Barstow around 9 p.m. with a full load of furniture destined for a warehouse in North Las Vegas. The sun had just dropped below the mountains, leaving the sky that deep purple color that only exists in the desert. My rig, a red Freightliner I'd been driving for 6 years, was running smooth. Tank was full. Logbook was current. Everything was perfect. The CB radio crackled with the usual chatter on Channel 19. Truckers warning about speed traps, complaining about dispatchers, telling dirty jokes to pass the time. I had it on low volume, just enough to keep me company but not enough to be distracting. I was about 40 miles out of Barstow, deep in the empty stretch where there's nothing but darkness and the occasional set of headlights passing in the opposite direction, when the voice cut through the static. Driver in the red Freightliner. I glanced at the radio, surprised. The voice was male, calm, with no trucker slang or CB lingo. Just flat, professional, almost robotic. Driver in the red Freightliner, you need to pull over. Now. My hands tightened on the wheel. I looked in my mirrors, nothing but empty highway behind me. I checked ahead, clear road, no vehicles in sight. I keyed up the mic, this is red Freightliner. Who am I talking to? What's your handle? Static. I tried again. Breaker 19, this is the red Freightliner eastbound on I-15. Someone just called me out specifically. Identify yourself. Nothing but the faint crackle of empty airwaves. I hung up the mic and shook my head. Probably just some bored kid with a CB radio, I thought. You get that sometimes. People scanning channels, messing with truckers for entertainment. But something about that voice bothered me. The way it had said red Freightliner. How many red Freightliners were on this highway tonight? How did he know? I pushed the thought away and focused on the road. The mile markers ticked by. 143, 144, 145. Then the voice came back. Driver in the red Freightliner, you need to pull over. Check your trailer. Now. My breath caught in my throat. This time the voice was more urgent. Not panicked, just insistent. Like someone giving orders during an emergency. I grabbed the mic. Who is this? How do you know what I'm driving? No response. I felt a spike of adrenaline hit my system. My logical brain told me this was probably nothing. Some elaborate prank, or maybe another trucker who'd passed me earlier and was now having a laugh. But my gut was screaming that something was wrong. I ignored it, kept driving. My delivery was time-sensitive, and I was already cutting it close. I didn't have time to pull over and investigate phantom CB voices. 2 minutes later, I felt it. A slight sway in my trailer. A subtle shift in weight that any experienced driver can feel through the cab. Something was off. Damn it, I muttered. I put on my hazard lights and started looking for a safe place to pull over. There wasn't much shoulder on this part of I-15. Just a narrow strip of gravel before the desert took over. I found a slightly wider section near mile marker 147 and eased my rig onto it, coming to a stop. I sat there for a moment, engine idling, staring at my side mirror. The desert stretched out in all directions, black and infinite under a sky full of stars. No other vehicles. No lights except my own. I grabbed my flashlight from the door pocket and climbed out. The night air hit me like a wall. Still hot. Probably 90 degrees even though it was past 10 p.m. The sound of my idling engine echoed across the empty desert. Somewhere far off, a coyote howled. I walked along the side of my trailer, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, checking the tires, the straps, the undercarriage. Everything looked normal. The sway I'd felt was probably just the load shifting slightly. It happens. I reached the back doors of the trailer. They were wide open. My blood turned to ice. I had locked those doors myself at the warehouse in Barstow. I always lock them. Always. I've been doing this job for 14 years. Checking and double-checking the locks is as automatic as breathing. I swung the flashlight up and illuminated the interior of the trailer. The furniture was still there. Couches, dining tables, dressers, all strapped down and secure. Nothing appeared to be missing. But the doors were definitely open, swinging slightly in the hot desert wind. I walked closer, my heart pounding. The lock was still attached to one door, but it had been opened. Not broken, not cut, opened, like someone had used a key. What the hell? I whispered. I climbed up into the trailer and did a quick inventory. Everything was accounted for. Nothing stolen, nothing damaged. So why were the doors open? That's when I saw them. Footprints. Muddy footprints leading from the front of the trailer, where the load began, all the way to the back doors where I was standing. But here's the thing. There was no mud. Not in Barstow. Not on the highway. Not anywhere in this bone-dry desert. It hadn't rained in months. I knelt down and examined the prints more closely with my flashlight. They were small, child-sized, barefoot. A little girl's footprints, tracked in mud that shouldn't exist, leading from inside my locked trailer to the now open doors. My hands started shaking. I backed out of the trailer and jumped down to the gravel, my mind racing. This didn't make sense. None of this made any sense. I pulled out my CB mic with trembling fingers and keyed up. This is Red Freightliner at mile marker 147. Someone warned me to check my trailer. My doors were open and there are footprints inside. Who is this? Who's been watching me? For a long moment there was only static. Then the voice returned, quieter this time, almost sad. You were supposed to stop sooner. What? I demanded. What do you mean? You were supposed to stop sooner, the voice repeated. Now she's already out. The mic fell from my hand. I spun around, flashlight sweeping the darkness, illuminating the scrub brush and rocks and endless empty desert. And then I saw her, about 50 yards away, standing perfectly still in the sagebrush, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old. She wore a dirty white dress that hung off her thin frame. Her hair was long and dark, hanging over her face. Her feet were bare, and she was staring directly at me. Hey! I called out, my voice cracking. Hey, are you okay? Are you lost? She didn't respond, didn't move, just stood there impossibly still, watching me. I took a step toward her. It's okay. I can help you. Do you need? She tilted her head to the side. Too far, at an angle that human necks don't bend. Then she smiled. I saw it even from 50 yards away in the beam of my flashlight. A smile too wide with too many teeth. And then she vanished. Not ran away. Not ducked behind a bush. Just disappeared. Like someone had turned off a switch. I don't remember getting back in my truck. I don't remember closing the trailer doors or pulling back onto the highway. The next thing I clearly recall is driving 85 miles per hour down I-15, white-knuckling the steering wheel, my entire body shaking. The CB radio was silent. I drove straight through to Las Vegas without stopping. Didn't care about speed limits or rest breaks or anything except putting distance between myself and mile marker 147. When I finally pulled into the warehouse in North Las Vegas at 1 a.m., I sat in my cab for 10 minutes just trying to catch my breath and convince myself I hadn't lost my mind. The warehouse crew unloaded my trailer. I watched them the entire time, half expecting them to find something. A stowaway, an explanation, anything. But there was nothing. Just furniture. The muddy footprints were gone. Like they'd never existed. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. Who would believe me? The next day, I Googled, I-15 missing girl Mojave Desert. The search results made my stomach drop. In 2003, 20 years ago, a 7-year-old girl named Emma Vasquez went missing during a family road trip between Barstow and Las Vegas. They found the family's car abandoned at mile marker 145 with 3 flat tires. The parents and older brother were found wandering in the desert, dehydrated and incoherent, talking about a hitchhiker they'd picked up who wasn't human. They searched for weeks, brought in dogs, helicopters, volunteers. They never found Emma. The case went cold. The family fell apart. The father killed himself 2 years later. The mother went into a psychiatric facility. I found a picture of Emma in one of the news articles. Dark hair, white dress, 7 years old. I slammed my laptop shut and threw up in my trash can. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the voice on the CB. You were supposed to stop sooner. What did that mean? Was I supposed to save her? Was I supposed to stop her from getting out? Or was I supposed to be her next victim? I called a trucker friend who'd been running I-15 longer than me. Old-timer named Jack who knew all the stories and legends of the desert highways. Jack, I said, you ever hear about anything weird happening around mile marker 147 on I-15? There was a long pause. Then, why are you asking? I told him everything. The voice, the open doors, the footprints, the girl. When I finished, he was quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Finally, he said, you're the 4th driver to tell me that story in the last 5 years. Always the same spot. Always Channel 19. Always a little girl in the desert. What is she? I whispered. I don't know, Jack said. But I know 3 things. 1, she's looking for a ride. 2, she hitchhikes in people's trailers somehow, even when they're locked. And 3, every driver who's seen her says the same thing. They heard a warning on the CB telling them to pull over and check their trailer. Who's giving the warning? That, Jack said quietly, might be the worst part. There's a theory among some of the old-timers. Back in 2003, when Emma went missing, there was a trucker who passed that stretch of highway the same night. He saw the abandoned car. He saw the family wandering in the desert. But he didn't stop. He was running late on a delivery. So he just kept driving and called it in later. My mouth went dry. What happened to him? He died 6 months later. Single vehicle accident on I-15. Right around mile marker 147. They said he swerved like he was avoiding something in the road. But there was nothing there. The weird part? His CB was keyed up when they found him. Like he'd been trying to warn someone. I felt cold despite the desert heat. You think he's the voice? The one warning drivers. I think, Jack said slowly, that some people don't get to rest until they fix their mistakes. And I think that trucker has been sitting out there for 20 years, watching that highway, trying to save other drivers from making his mistake. But what does she want? I asked. What happens if she gets out of your trailer? Jack was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. Nobody knows for sure. But 4 years ago, a family of 3 disappeared between Barstow and Vegas. They found their car at mile marker 148. Doors open, engine running, no sign of the family. Just small, muddy footprints leading away into the desert. Footprints that disappeared after 20 yards. I haven't taken I-15 through the Mojave at night since then. I route around it. Adds 3 hours to my trip, costs me money, pisses off my dispatcher. I don't care. Sometimes, late at night when I'm on other highways, I'll hear that voice on Channel 19. Calm, flat, warning other drivers about things they can't see yet. And I wonder how many of us are out there, how many drivers who made mistakes, who didn't stop when we should have, who are now trying to save others from the things that haunt these highways. I hope I never find out. But I keep my CB on Channel 19 just in case. Because out here in the empty places, on the loneliest roads, sometimes a warning is the only thing standing between you and something that's been waiting in the dark for 20 years. Something that's still looking for a ride. I've driven Highway 93 through Arizona more times than I can count. It's a straight shot between Phoenix and Las Vegas. Lonely, desolate, but reliable. You learn the rhythm of it after a while. You know where the speed traps hide, which gas stations have clean restrooms, and which rest stops are worth stopping at. The rest stop at mile marker 187 was never one of them. I'd passed it 100 times over the years, always during daylight, and it always looked abandoned. Cracked pavement, faded paint on the curbs, a cinderblock bathroom building that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the Reagan administration. The kind of place that screams, don't stop here unless you're desperate. But that night I was desperate. It was 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday in late October. I'd been driving for 11 hours straight, pushing my logbook to the absolute legal limit. My eyes were burning, my back ached, and my bladder was screaming at me. I needed to stop, stretch my legs, and use a restroom before I wet myself or fell asleep at the wheel. I saw the green rest area sign reflecting in my headlights. Rest area 1 mile. Thank God, I muttered, signaling even though there wasn't another vehicle in sight. I took the exit ramp and pulled into the rest stop. Under the pale yellow lights, it looked slightly better than I remembered, or maybe I was just too tired to care. The parking lot was nearly empty. I counted 4 cars scattered across the spaces. A beat-up Honda Civic, an older Toyota Camry, a minivan with a cracked windshield, and a Jeep with out-of-state plates. Other travelers catching sleep, probably. Made sense for this time of night. I parked my rig in one of the designated truck spaces, killed the engine, and climbed out. The desert air was cold and smelled like creosote and dust. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the faint hum of the highway, but otherwise, it was dead silent. The bathroom building stood about 50 yards away, lit by a single flickering light above the entrance. I walked toward it, my boots echoing on the cracked pavement. Inside, the restroom was exactly as depressing as I'd expected. Cracked tiles, flickering fluorescent lights, the smell of industrial cleaner failing to mask decades of use. But it was functional, and right now that's all I cared about. I finished my business, washed my hands in the rust-stained sink, and headed back outside. That's when I noticed something odd. The 4 cars that had been parked in the lot were gone. All of them. In the 5 minutes I'd been inside, they'd all disappeared. My rig was now the only vehicle in the entire rest stop. "Ha!" I said to myself. Must have all left at once. Strange, but not impossible. Maybe they'd been traveling together. Maybe it was just a coincidence. I walked back to my truck, climbed in, turned the key, and started the engine. I put it in gear, released the brake, and headed toward the exit ramp to get back on Highway 93. I followed the signs. Exit, northbound 93. The ramp curved to the right, climbing slightly toward where it should merge back onto the highway. But instead of leading to Highway 93, the ramp curved back around and deposited me right back into the rest stop parking lot. I hit the brakes. What the hell? I must have missed a turn, gotten confused in the dark. I circled through the lot and found the exit ramp again. This time I paid closer attention, following the painted arrows and the reflective signs. The ramp curved right, climbed slightly, and then I was back in the parking lot. Same position, same spot, like I'd driven in a complete circle. My heart started beating faster. I put the truck in park and sat there for a moment, trying to make sense of what was happening. Maybe I was more tired than I thought. Maybe I was seeing things. I tried a 3rd time. Same result. 4th time. Same result. 5th time, and now I was starting to panic. Same exact result. No matter which way I turned, no matter how carefully I followed the exit signs, the ramp looped me right back into the rest stop parking lot. Like some kind of impossible highway Mobius strip. I threw the truck into park and jumped out, my breath coming fast and shallow. This wasn't possible. This couldn't be happening. I actually walked toward the exit ramp. I followed it on foot, step by step, watching as it curved to the right, climbed at a slight angle, and then it just ended. Not at Highway 93. Not at any highway. The ramp terminated in a concrete barrier with a painted guardrail, beyond which was nothing but open desert and darkness. But when I'd been driving, the ramp had felt continuous. It hadn't dead-ended. It had looped back somehow in a way that made no physical sense. I walked back to the entrance ramp, the one I'd used to get into the rest stop from Highway 93. It was gone. Where the ramp should have been, where I'd driven in less than 20 minutes ago, there was now just a guardrail and empty desert, like the entrance had never existed. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." I pulled out my phone. No signal. Not unusual in rural Arizona, but not helpful either. I tried calling 911 anyway. The call failed immediately. No connection. I opened my GPS app. It showed my location as a blank space. Not even Highway 93 or Arizona. Just blank. Like I was nowhere. I ran back to my truck and tried the CB radio. Breaker 19. This is Iron Horse. I need assistance. I'm stuck at a rest stop on Highway 93, mile marker 187. Can anyone hear me? Static. This is Iron Horse calling any station. I'm trapped at a rest stop off Highway 93 northbound. Please respond. Nothing but the crackle of empty airwaves. I tried my truck's navigation system. It showed my position but couldn't plot a route out. No roads available, it kept saying. No roads available. There's a highway right there. I screamed at the screen, pointing toward where Highway 93 should be. But when I looked out my window at the desert beyond the guardrails, I couldn't see it anymore. No lights from passing cars. No sound of traffic. Just empty darkness stretching to the horizon. The rest stop had somehow disconnected, cut loose from reality. I sat there shaking, trying not to hyperventilate, trying to think logically. There had to be an explanation. Maybe I was having a breakdown. Maybe I'd fallen asleep at the wheel and this was all a dream. Maybe I saw movement near the bathroom building. A figure, standing under the flickering light. A woman. She was wearing what looked like a rest stop attendant uniform, brown pants, tan shirt with a name tag. She was just standing there, hands at her sides, watching me. Relief flooded through me. Someone else. Someone who could help. I jumped out of my truck and ran toward her. Hey, excuse me. I need help. I can't find the exit. She didn't move, just stood there watching me approach with a blank expression. As I got closer, I could see her more clearly. Middle-aged, pale skin, dark circles under her eyes. Her uniform looked old, style from maybe the 1980s or 90s. Please, I said, stopping a few feet away from her. I've been trying to leave for the past 30 minutes. The exit ramp just keeps bringing me back here. Do you have a phone I can use? Is there another way out? She smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the kind of smile that people give at funerals, sad and knowing. You can't leave until sunrise, she said softly. What? What do you mean? You can't leave until sunrise, she repeated, her voice flat and distant. None of us can. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Who else is here? She gestured toward the parking lot. I turned and looked. The 4 cars were back. The Honda, the Toyota, the minivan, the Jeep, all parked in the exact same spots they'd been in when I first arrived. But they were different now, covered in dust, tires flat, windows dirty, like they'd been sitting there not for minutes, but for years. They tried to leave too, the woman said behind me. Some of them tried for days, driving in circles, looking for exits that don't exist anymore. Eventually, they gave up. Eventually, they accepted it. Accepted what? I turned back to her, my voice rising. What is this place? Her smile faded. This rest stop closed in 1998. There was an accident. A semi-truck lost control on the exit ramp, crashed into the bathroom building. 6 people died, including me. I was working the night shift. I stumbled backward. No, you're not. You're not real. I'm as real as you are, she said quietly. Right now, in this place, we're all the same. We're all trapped between one place and another, between the highway and nowhere. How do I get out? I demanded. There has to be a way out. She pointed to the east, where the sky was still black but would eventually show the first hints of dawn. When the sun rises, the road comes back. The exit appears. You can leave, but only then. How long? I asked, my voice breaking. How long until sunrise? She glanced at an old watch on her wrist, a watch that had stopped at 3:47 a.m. 3 hours, she said. You stopped at 3:17. Sunrise is at 6:24. You have 3 hours and 7 minutes to wait. And if I don't wait? If I try to drive out before then? Her expression darkened. Then you become like them. She gestured to the dusty cars. You loop forever, driving the same exit ramp over and over until your gas runs out, your engine dies, and you're stuck here permanently. Some of them are still sitting in their cars, still waiting for a sunrise that never comes for them because they rejected the rules. I spent the next 3 hours sitting in my truck with the doors locked, engine running to keep the heat on, watching the clock on my dashboard with a mixture of terror and disbelief. The woman in the attendant uniform had disappeared back into the bathroom building. I didn't go looking for her. Around 4:30 a.m., I saw movement in one of the cars, the Honda Civic. A figure sat up in the driver's seat. A man, maybe in his 30s. He looked around, confused, then tried to start his car. The engine turned over but wouldn't catch. Dead battery, probably. He got out and started walking toward my truck. "Don't," I whispered, even though he couldn't hear me. "Don't come over here." But he did. He knocked on my window. I didn't roll it down. "Hey man," he called through the glass. "You got jumper cables? My battery's dead." I just stared at him. His clothes were from another era, late 90s style. His hair was cut in a fashion that hadn't been popular in 25 years. "Your car's been here since 1998, I said, loud enough for him to hear through the glass. He looked confused. "What? No, I just pulled in like an hour ago. I was driving to Vegas. Just needed a quick rest." "What year is it?" I asked. What year is it?" I repeated. He laughed nervously. "It's 1998, October 13th. "Why are you asking me?" "It's 2024, I said. "You've been here for 26 years. His face went white. He stumbled backward, looking around the rest stop like he was seeing it for the first time. Then he looked down at his hands. They were translucent in the dim light, fading. He screamed and ran back toward his car. But before he reached it, he vanished completely, just dissolved into the night air like morning mist. I watched as, one by one, the other cars flickered like bad TV reception. There and gone. There and gone. Ghosts of vehicles and travelers who'd made the mistake of stopping here, of not waiting for sunrise, of trying to force their way out. At 6:15 a.m., the sky finally started to lighten in the east, deep purple giving way to dark blue. The stars began to fade. I gripped my steering wheel and watched the eastern horizon like my life depended on it. At exactly 6:24 a.m., the sun crested the distant mountains, and the highway roared back to life. I could hear it suddenly, the sound of traffic. Vehicles passing on Highway 93. The normal sounds of the world that had been absent for 3 hours. I looked toward the exit ramp. It was there, complete, proper, leading up to a clearly visible merge lane onto Highway 93 northbound. I didn't hesitate. I put my truck in gear and drove straight for that exit. Not speeding, not panicking, just steady and deliberate. The ramp curved right, climbed slightly, and merged onto Highway 93. Real highway, real traffic, real world. I merged into the flow of morning commuters and long-haul truckers and kept driving. I didn't stop, didn't slow down, didn't even breathe properly until I was 50 miles north and pulling into a truck stop in Kingman for gas. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely work the fuel pump. Later that day, I looked up the rest stop at mile marker 187. Found the old news articles. September 22nd, 1998. A semi-truck lost control on the exit ramp due to brake failure. Crashed into the rest stop facilities. 6 fatalities, including a rest stop attendant named Catherine Morris who'd been on duty that night. The rest stop was closed immediately after the accident. Officially, permanently, but according to state records, they couldn't fully demolish it. Every time they sent crews out to tear it down, the equipment would malfunction. Workers would get disoriented and leave. One construction supervisor reported that his entire crew drove in circles for 4 hours trying to find the exit after they arrived at 3 a.m. for an early start. Eventually, they just gave up. Put up signs marking it as closed, no services. But the signs keep disappearing, and drivers keep stopping there, especially between 3 a.m. and sunrise. I filed a report with the State Highway Department. They thanked me politely and said they'd look into it. But I could hear the resignation in the dispatcher's voice. Like I wasn't the first driver to call with this story. I still drive Highway 93 sometimes. I don't have a choice. It's part of my route. But I plan my trips carefully now. I make sure I pass mile marker 187 during daylight hours. And if I ever find myself on that stretch of highway between 3 a.m. and sunrise with a full bladder and heavy eyelids, I keep driving. Because I know the truth about that rest stop now. It's not abandoned. It's full of people. Travelers who stopped at the wrong time. Who tried to leave before sunrise. Who are still there, trapped in cars that have long since rusted to nothing in the real world. Driving exit ramps that loop forever. Waiting for a dawn that will never come for them. The woman in the attendant uniform saved my life that night. She told me the rules. She gave me a chance to escape. But I know she's still there. Still working her shift. Still warning drivers who stop at 3:17 a.m. that they have exactly 3 hours and 7 minutes to wait. Still trapped in the rest stop with no exit. And sometimes, late at night when I'm driving through Arizona and I see those green rest area signs reflecting in my headlights, I wonder how many others are there with her. How many travelers who didn't listen, who didn't wait, who tried to force their way back to reality and failed. I wonder if they can still see the highway, if they can see us driving past, free and alive and moving forward. I wonder if they know they're ghosts, or if they're still waiting for sunrise, checking their watches, counting down minutes to a dawn that died 26 years ago. I'll never know for sure, and I'm grateful for that. There's a truck stop off I-40 in New Mexico, just east of Tucumcari, that looks like it's been frozen in time since Eisenhower was president. The kind of place with chrome trim, neon signs that flicker more than they glow, and a diner attached to the side that serves breakfast 24 hours a day. The Silver Star Diner. I'd driven past it dozens of times over the years but never stopped. There were newer, cleaner truck stops just down the road. Places with hot showers, decent Wi-Fi, and food that didn't look like it had been sitting under a heat lamp since the Korean War. But that night, I didn't have a choice. It was 2:47 a.m. on a freezing February night. I was hauling electronics from Albuquerque to Oklahoma City, running behind schedule because of a snowstorm that had closed I-40 for 3 hours. My stomach was eating itself, my thermos was empty, and the next truck stop was another 60 miles ahead. When I saw the Silver Star's neon sign glowing through the falling snow, half the letters burned out, so it read, Alfur. I took the exit. The parking lot was nearly empty. Just my rig and one other semi parked way in the back, covered in road salt and grime. The diner itself looked like a movie set from a 1950s film, all chrome and glass and faded red vinyl booths visible through the windows. I parked, killed the engine, and ran through the snow to the entrance. A bell jingled as I pushed open the door. The interior was exactly what I'd expected. Black and white checkered floor, red vinyl booths with chrome trim, a long counter with spinning stools, a jukebox in the corner playing nothing but static. The smell of coffee and grease hung in the air. Behind the counter stood a waitress. She was middle-aged, rail-thin, with her hair pulled back in a style that might have been fashionable in 1962. Her uniform was that same vintage, a pink dress with a white apron, a name tag that read Dolores in faded letters. But it was her skin that made me pause. She was pale. Not just pale, corpse pale. Like she'd never seen sunlight in her entire life. "Sit anywhere, Han," she said without looking up from the coffee pot she was filling. I slid into a booth near the window and picked up the laminated menu. Standard diner fare, burgers, eggs, pancakes. Nothing special. I was just happy to get warm and eat something. Dolores appeared at my table with the coffee pot. She poured me a cup without asking. The coffee was black as motor oil and smelled like it had been sitting on the burner for hours. "What'll it be?" she asked, her voice flat and distant. "Burger and fries," I said. "And keep the coffee coming." She wrote it down on a small pad, actual paper, not a computer tablet, and disappeared through a swinging door into the kitchen. I was alone in the diner, completely alone. Just me, the static from the jukebox, and the sound of wind howling outside. That's when I noticed the man in the corner booth. I could have sworn the diner was empty when I walked in, but there he was, sitting in the far corner with his back to me. He wore a trucker jacket, the old-fashioned kind with patches sewn on, and a baseball cap pulled low. He wasn't moving, wasn't eating, just sitting there perfectly still, facing the wall. "Hey," I called out. "Cold one tonight, huh?" He didn't respond, didn't even twitch. I shrugged it off. Maybe he was asleep. Truckers catch rest wherever they can. Dolores returned with my burger and fries. The food looked surprisingly good, actually. Hot and fresh. I dug in, grateful for something warm in my stomach. Halfway through my meal, I glanced back at the corner booth. The man was facing me now. I nearly choked on a French fry. I hadn't heard him move, hadn't heard the creak of vinyl or the scrape of boots on linoleum. But now he was turned completely around, staring directly at me with a blank, expressionless face. His skin was the same deathly pale color as Dolores's. His eyes were dark and sunken, and he wasn't blinking. "You okay, buddy?" I asked, my voice shakier than I wanted it to be. He didn't answer, just stared. I turned back to my food, trying to ignore him. Maybe he was drunk. Maybe he was on something. Not my problem. I finished my burger and signaled for Dolores. She appeared instantly, like she'd been waiting just out of sight. "Who's that guy in the corner?" I asked quietly, nodding toward the booth. She followed my gaze. Her expression didn't change. "Nobody's been sitting there all night, hon." My blood went cold. "What?" "Yes, there is. Right there. Corner booth. Trucker jacket and cap." She looked again, her pale face illuminated by the flickering fluorescent lights. "That booth's empty. Has been since my shift started at midnight." I turned to look. The man was gone. The booth was empty. No jacket. No cap. No evidence anyone had been sitting there. I just saw him. I stammered. He was right there, staring at me. Dolores's expression softened into something that might have been pity. "You look tired, hon. Been driving long?" "Yeah," I said, suddenly feeling very cold despite the diner's warmth. "Yeah, maybe I'm just tired." She refilled my coffee without asking. "Drink up. Coffee helps." I wrapped my hands around the warm cup and tried to steady my breathing. I was exhausted. That had to be it. Exhaustion and stress playing tricks on my mind. I pulled out my wallet to pay. "How much do I owe you?" $6.50, she said. I handed her a 10. "Keep the change." She took the bill and walked back toward the register. That's when I noticed something odd. Her feet weren't touching the floor. She was floating, just an inch or two above the checkerboard tiles, gliding soundlessly across the diner. I stood up so fast I knocked over my coffee cup. The hot liquid spread across the table, but I didn't care. "What the hell?" I whispered. Dolores turned to look at me, still hovering that impossible inch above the floor. Her face remained expressionless. "Something wrong, hon? You're floating." She looked down at her feet, or where her feet should have been touching the ground. Then she looked back up at me. "Am I?" I hadn't noticed. "This isn't real," I said, backing toward the door. "You're not real." "I'm as real as I ever was," she said calmly. "Just like him." I turned around. The man from the corner booth was standing right behind me. I could see him clearly now in the harsh fluorescent light. His face was wrong. Too still, too pale, with skin that looked like wax. His trucker jacket had a patch on the shoulder. Roadway Express, a company that had gone out of business in the 1980s. But it was his eyes that terrified me most. They were looking at me, but they weren't seeing me. They were looking through me at something far away, something only he could see. "Who are you?" I choked out. His mouth moved, but no sound came out at first. Then, like a record player starting up, his voice crackled to life. "Robert Kendall," he said slowly. "Roadway Express, driver number 4472. What do you want?" I was driving to Amarillo, September 1983. His voice was mechanical, like he was reading from a script he'd memorized long ago. "Stopped here for coffee. Never left." "Why?" I demanded, my back pressed against the door. "Why didn't you leave?" He tilted his head. The movement was wrong, too slow, too deliberate. The food here. You can't leave. Once you eat, you become part of. His voice faded into static, like a radio losing signal. Dolores was beside me now, though I hadn't seen her move. He's been here 41 years, she said softly, sitting in that booth, waiting for a sunrise that never comes inside these walls. And you? I asked, my hand fumbling for the door handle behind me. Me? She smiled sadly. I've been here longer. Since 1962. I was working the night shift when I had my heart attack. Fell right there behind the counter. Didn't even know I was dead until days later when nobody came to relieve me. My hand found the door handle. I gripped it like a lifeline. The food, I said. You said once you eat the food, you become part of the diner, she finished. Part of the Silver Star. Forever. I looked down at my empty plate, the burger I'd eaten, the fries, the coffee I'd drunk. No, I whispered. No, no, no. Dolores reached out and touched my arm. Her hand was ice cold. I'm sorry, Han. I tried to warn you. I poured your coffee slow. I brought your food out late. I was hoping you'd leave before you ate. Some do. The smart ones. The ones who feel something's wrong. I can't stay here, I said, my voice breaking. I have a family. I have a daughter. She's getting married in 3 months. I can't. Look at him, Dolores interrupted, pointing at Robert Kendall. He had a family too, a wife and 2 sons. They waited for him, filed missing person reports, searched for years. His wife died in 2001, still not knowing what happened to him. His sons are grandfathers now. Robert's mouth moved again. Tell them. Tell my boys. I'm sorry. I'm not dead, I screamed, yanking the door open. The cold night air hit me like a fist. I stumbled out into the snow, gasping, my heart hammering in my chest. Behind me, I could hear Dolores's voice drifting through the open door. You ate the food, Han. You'll be back. They always come back. I ran to my truck, slipping on ice, nearly falling twice. I climbed into the cab, started the engine, and floored it out of that parking lot without even checking my mirrors. I drove for 2 hours straight without stopping. Put 120 miles between myself and the Silver Star Diner. When I finally pulled into a real truck stop, a modern one with bright lights and security cameras and normal people, I sat in my cab shaking for 20 minutes. I'd escaped. I'd eaten their food, but I'd gotten out. Dolores was wrong. I wasn't trapped. I called my daughter. She answered on the 3rd ring, groggy and confused. Dad? It's 5 in the morning. Are you okay? Yeah. Baby? I said, my voice thick with emotion. Yeah, I'm fine. I just wanted to hear your voice. Tell you I love you. I love you too, Dad. Are you sure you're okay? You sound weird. I'm fine. I'll see you next week. Be safe. I hung up and allowed myself to believe I dodged a bullet. A supernatural bullet, sure, but still. I was alive. I was free. I completed my delivery in Oklahoma City and headed back toward Albuquerque 2 days later. Different route. I made absolutely sure I wouldn't pass anywhere near that diner. But when I merged onto I-40 westbound, something felt wrong. The highway looked different, older. The pavement was cracked and faded. The other vehicles on the road looked outdated, cars and trucks from decades ago, all covered in a thin layer of dust. I checked my GPS. It showed me on I-40, but the map looked wrong, distorted. Then I saw it ahead of me, the exit sign for the Silver Star Diner. No, I said out loud. I'm nowhere near Tucumcari. I'm 60 miles east of Albuquerque. But the exit was there. The same faded sign, the same ramp, and my steering wheel was turning on its own. I tried to fight it, yanking the wheel to the left, but my hands wouldn't obey. My foot pressed the brake, and my truck took the exit whether I wanted it to or not. The Silver Star appeared through my windshield, exactly as I'd left it. Same flickering neon sign, same nearly empty parking lot. My truck parked itself. I sat there, frozen, as my hand opened the door and my legs carried me toward the diner entrance. The bell jingled as I walked in. Dolores looked up from behind the counter and smiled. a sad, knowing smile. "Welcome back, Han," she said. "I knew you'd return. They always do." Robert Kendall was sitting in his corner booth, facing the wall, exactly as I'd first seen him. And there was a new figure in the diner now, sitting in the booth by the window. Me. I was sitting in the booth where I'd eaten that burger 3 nights ago. Pale skin, sunken eyes, trucker jacket, staring at nothing. "No," I whispered, but my voice sounded far away, distant, like it was coming from underwater. Dolores poured a cup of coffee and set it on the counter. "You'll get used to it eventually," she said. "Takes some folks longer than others. Robert there, he took 5 years to stop fighting it. But you'll settle in. They all do." I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I was already sitting in that booth by the window. Had been sitting there since the moment I'd swallowed the first bite of that burger. Everything since then, the drive to Oklahoma City, the phone call to my daughter, the return trip, had been a dream. A ghost's memory of a life I no longer had. "I'm dead," I said, and this time my voice worked. Flat, mechanical, like Robert's. "Yes, Han," Dolores said gently. "You are. Heart attack. Right there at that table. Probably the stress and the exhaustion. Happens sometimes. You're not the first. Won't be the last." I looked down at my hands. They were translucent, fading. "My daughter," I whispered. "Her wedding." "She'll be fine," Dolores said. "She'll miss you. She'll grieve. But she'll be fine. They always are." I felt myself drifting toward the booth where my body sat. My ghost body. My forever body. I sat down across from myself and stared at the pale, dead thing wearing my face. The jukebox finally stopped playing static. A song started up, something old and crackling from the 1950s. I didn't recognize it. Dolores refilled my coffee cup, even though I hadn't touched it. "Welcome to the Silver Star, Han," she said. "Breakfast is served 24 hours a day." Robert Kendall turned to look at me from his corner booth. His lips moved. "Tell them, I'm sorry." I understood now. That's all we could do here. Repeat our last thoughts, our last regrets, forever. My lips moved too, forming words I couldn't control. "Tell her, I'm sorry, I'll miss her wedding." And I knew, with horrible certainty, that I would repeat those words every time a living person walked through that door. For the next 40 years. Or the next 100. Or forever. Because the Silver Star Diner never closes. And the dead never leave. They found my truck 3 days later, parked at an abandoned lot off I-40 near Tucumcari. Engine cold. Cab empty. My logbook showed I'd stopped at a place called the Silver Star Diner. But when the state troopers investigated, they couldn't find any diner by that name. Just an empty lot with a cracked foundation and the faint outline of where a building used to stand. The medical examiner ruled it a heart attack. Said I probably pulled over feeling sick and wandered off in confusion before I collapsed. They found my body a mile away in the desert. My daughter had her wedding without me. She put an empty chair at the head table with my picture on it. And late that night, when she was alone and grieving, she could have sworn she heard my voice on the wind. "Tell her, I'm sorry, I'll miss her wedding." But she convinced herself it was just her imagination. Just the grief playing tricks on her mind. She never knew the truth. That I was still sitting in a diner that doesn't exist, watching the door, hoping someone, anyone, will hear my warning before they order the burger and fries. Before they become part of the Silver Star. Forever. West Texas is the kind of empty that makes you question reality. You can drive for 100 miles without seeing another living soul. Just endless flat scrubland, distant mesas, and a sky so big it makes you feel like an ant crawling across God's dashboard. I loved it. After 18 years of hauling freight across every congested interstate from coast to coast, there was something peaceful about the isolation of Highway 285 between Pecos and Fort Stockton. No traffic, no billboards, no distractions. Just you, your rig, and the road. That night it was just me, my rig, and something else. Something that shouldn't have been possible. I'd left Pecos around 11 p.m. with a load of oilfield equipment bound for a drilling site outside of Odessa. The moon was just a sliver, what truckers call a widowmaker moon, because it gives barely enough light to see the road but not enough to see what's coming. The highway stretched ahead of me like a black ribbon, my headlights the only illumination for miles. My radio was tuned to some scratchy AM station playing old country music. Hank Williams was singing about being so lonesome he could cry. Fitting. I'd been driving for about 40 minutes when I first noticed the headlights in my mirror. 2 perfect circles of white light, maybe a quarter-mile back, matching my speed exactly. Another trucker, probably. Or maybe someone heading home from a late shift at one of the oil rigs. I didn't think much of it at first, but after 10 miles they were still there. Same distance, same intensity, never getting closer, never falling back, never passing. I eased off the throttle, dropping from 68 to 62 miles per hour. Most drivers would pass me or at least close the distance. The headlights stayed exactly where they were, quarter-mile back. "All right, weirdo," I muttered, pressing the accelerator. I pushed up to 75, faster than I should have been going on this empty highway, but I wanted to see what this guy would do. The headlights matched me perfectly, like we were connected by an invisible tow cable. A small knot of unease formed in my stomach. I tried my CB radio. "Breaker 19, this is Desert Rat southbound on 285. Got a driver about a quarter-mile behind me." "You got your ears on." "Static. This is Desert Rat calling the vehicle following me on Highway 285. What's your 20? More static. Then a burst of interference that sounded almost like laughter before fading back to white noise. I hung up the mic and checked my mirrors again. The headlights were still there, unwavering, unblinking. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The headlights weren't moving. I mean, they were following me, keeping pace with me, but they weren't bouncing or swaying the way headlights do on a road with imperfections. Highway 285 wasn't the smoothest. There were cracks, patches, subtle rises and dips that made your rig shift and sway. But those headlights were perfectly steady, like they were mounted on rails instead of a vehicle, or like they weren't attached to a vehicle at all. "Don't be stupid," I told myself. "It's just another truck. Bad shocks, maybe. Steady driver." But I didn't believe it. I watched those lights for another 5 miles, my heart rate gradually increasing, my palms starting to sweat despite the cab's air conditioning. Then I decided to test something. I hit my brakes, hard. My truck slowed rapidly from 75 to 40 in about 5 seconds. The kind of sudden deceleration that would make any driver behind you slam on their brakes or swerve to avoid a collision. The headlights didn't change speed, didn't brake, didn't slow down at all. They should have crashed into me, but instead they just stopped exactly where they were, quarter-mile back, like they'd hit an invisible wall. "What the hell?" I whispered. I accelerated again, watching my speedometer climb. 50, 60, 70, 80. The headlights matched me instantly. No acceleration period. No gradual increase in speed. They just adjusted, like they were synced to my truck's computer system. That's when I realized I couldn't hear an engine. I rolled down my window, letting the cool night air rush in. I could hear my own engine, the familiar growl of my Cummins diesel. I could hear the whine of my tires on asphalt. I could hear the wind. But from behind me, where those headlights followed, there was no engine noise. No sound of another vehicle at all. Just silence. Panic was setting in now. Real, primal panic that made my hands shake and my breath come in short, shallow gasps. I needed people. Witnesses. Someone else who could see what I was seeing and confirm I wasn't losing my mind. I remembered there was a small truck stop about 15 miles ahead, Little's Fuel Stop, a mom-and-pop operation that had been there since the 1970s. Nothing fancy, but it had fuel, coffee, and most importantly, other human beings. I pushed my speed to 85, watching the mile markers flash by, counting down the distance to salvation. The headlights followed effortlessly. When I finally saw the lights of Little's Fuel Stop glowing on the horizon, I could have cried with relief. I took the exit too fast, my trailer swaying slightly as I pulled into the lot. There were 3 other trucks parked there and a couple of passenger vehicles. Normal people. Living people. I brought my rig to a stop near the entrance and sat there for a moment, hands still gripping the wheel, staring at my side mirror. The headlights had followed me off the highway. They were coming down the exit ramp now, moving slowly and deliberately toward the parking lot. "Okay," I said to myself, trying to steady my voice. "Okay, you're going to see what this is. It's probably just some asshole messing with you. Probably just." The headlights entered the parking lot, and I could see clearly now, under the sodium lights of the truck stop, there was nothing there. No truck, no car, no vehicle of any kind. Just 2 beams of light, floating about 4 feet off the ground, moving through empty air like they were attached to an invisible machine. My rational mind completely shattered. The headlights stopped about 10 feet from my cab. They didn't dim, didn't flicker, just stayed there, pointed directly at me, bathing my truck in cold white light. I could feel the warmth of them through my windshield. Real light, physical light, but coming from nothing. I sat frozen, unable to move, unable to think, just staring at these impossible lights that had followed me for 60 miles. They hovered there for what felt like an eternity. Probably less than a minute in reality, but time had lost all meaning. Then, slowly, they began to fade. Not like someone turning off a switch, but like someone walking backward into fog. The intensity decreased gradually, the beams growing dimmer and dimmer until they were just faint glows in the darkness. And then they were gone completely. I stumbled out of my cab and nearly collapsed onto the pavement. My legs felt like water. My entire body was shaking. A trucker walking from the restroom stopped and looked at me with concern. "You all right, buddy? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Did you see that?" I gasped, pointing to the empty space where the lights had been. "Did you see those headlights?" He looked where I was pointing, then back at me. "See what?" "The lights. The headlights that followed me into the lot. They were right there." He frowned. "I just saw you pull in. Didn't see nobody else." "No, they were right there. 2 headlights, just floating in the air." The trucker took a step back, his expression shifting from concern to wariness. "You been driving too long without sleep, friend? Maybe you should rest up before you get back on the road." I wanted to argue, to insist on what I'd seen, but the look in his eyes stopped me. He thought I was crazy. Hell, maybe I was. "Yeah," I said weakly. "Yeah, maybe you're right." He nodded and walked away quickly, like he was afraid whatever I had might be contagious. I went inside the truck stop on shaky legs. The fluorescent lights were too bright, almost painful after the darkness of the highway. A bored clerk sat behind the counter, half watching a small TV. I approached him slowly. "Excuse me, do you have security cameras in the parking lot?" He looked up. "Yeah, why? Can I see the footage from the last 5 minutes?" He raised an eyebrow. "Someone hit your truck?" "No, please. I need to see something." Something in my voice must have convinced him, because he shrugged and pulled up the camera feed on a grainy monitor behind the counter. I watched myself pull into the lot, watched my truck come to a stop, watched myself sit there in the cab for a minute. There was nothing behind me, no headlights, no lights of any kind, just my lone truck pulling into an empty parking lot. "See anything?" the clerk asked. I couldn't speak, just shook my head. I bought coffee I didn't drink and a sandwich I couldn't eat. I sat in a booth by the window for an hour, watching the parking lot, waiting for those lights to return. They didn't. Eventually, an older trucker, maybe in his 60s, weathered face, kind eyes, sat down across from me uninvited. "You're the 3rd driver this month," he said quietly. I looked up at him. "What?" "3rd driver to come in here looking spooked. All asking about the cameras. All saying they saw something following them that wasn't there." My mouth went dry. "You know what it is?" He leaned back inside. "I've been running this route for 30 years. And I'll tell you something most drivers won't talk about because they're afraid of sounding crazy. There's a stretch of Highway 285, between mile markers 140 and 170, where strange things happen." "What kind of things?" "Lights mostly. Drivers see headlights following them that don't belong to any vehicle. Some hear voices on dead CB channels. A few report seeing a whole phantom truck, black cab, no markings, that matches their speed but disappears when they try to get close to it. "What is it?" I whispered. He shook his head slowly. "Nobody knows for sure. Some folks say it's the ghost of a driver who died out there in the 80s. Guy named Marcus Webb. Fell asleep at the wheel, crossed the median, hit another truck head-on. Killed himself and a family of 4, parents and 2 little kids." "Jesus," I breathed. Story goes that Webb's last moments were spent watching those headlights come toward him, knowing he was about to hit them, unable to stop. Some people think his spirit is trapped in that moment, endlessly driving that highway, endlessly watching those headlights approach. "But I was the one being followed," I said. The old trucker gave me a sad look. "Maybe you got it backwards. Maybe you weren't being followed. Maybe you were the one doing the following, and those lights were trying to warn you. Trying to tell you to slow down, pay attention, don't fall asleep." A chill ran down my spine. I wasn't going to fall asleep. I was wide awake. "Were you?" He stood up slowly, joints creaking. "Or were you starting to drift? As getting heavy? Mind starting to wander? Maybe those lights saved your life tonight. Kept you alert. Kept you afraid. Kept you awake when you might have dozed off and drifted into oncoming traffic." He walked away before I could respond. I sat there for another hour, thinking about what he'd said. Had I been getting drowsy? I'd been driving for hours. Maybe my eyes had been getting heavy and I just hadn't noticed. Maybe those lights hadn't been chasing me. Maybe they'd been protecting me. Eventually, I got back in my truck and completed my delivery. But I took a different route. Added 3 hours to my trip by swinging north through Carlsbad instead of continuing on 285. My dispatcher was pissed. I didn't care. I still drive Highway 285 sometimes. Can't always avoid it. It's the most direct route for certain jobs. But I plan my trips carefully now, making sure I'm well-rested, caffeinated, and alert. And I drive during daylight hours whenever possible. Because 3 weeks after my encounter, I learned something that the old trucker at Little's fuel stop didn't tell me. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe he thought it would scare me too much. Marcus Webb, the driver who caused that fatal accident in 1987, didn't fall asleep at the wheel randomly. According to the accident report I found in an old newspaper archive online, he'd been driving for 14 hours straight, trying to make a delivery deadline. Multiple witnesses from earlier that day reported that Webb had been seen at truck stops, chugging coffee, looking exhausted, but refusing to rest. The accident happened at 2:47 a.m. at mile marker 162 on Highway 285. I pulled out my logbook and checked the entries from the night I was followed. I'd entered Highway 285 at 11:03 p.m. at mile marker 95. The headlights first appeared in my mirror at approximately 11:45 p.m. I cross-referenced the distance and time. Mile marker 162. The headlights had appeared at the exact spot where Marcus Webb had crossed the median and killed himself and that family 37 years ago. And I'd been driving for 14 hours that day, just like Webb. I was exhausted, just like Webb. And if those lights hadn't appeared, if they hadn't kept me terrified and alert for the next 60 miles until I reached that truck stop, there's a very good chance I would have dozed off somewhere on that empty highway. Maybe crossed the median. Maybe hit an oncoming vehicle. Maybe killed myself and whoever was unlucky enough to be driving toward me. The lights weren't haunting me. They were warning me. Marcus Webb had spent 37 years trying to prevent other drivers from making his mistake. From driving too long, too tired, too stubborn to stop and rest. I understand now why the lights never blinked. Because Webb never got to blink in those final seconds before impact. He died with his eyes open, watching death approach in the form of headlights he couldn't avoid. Now he watches from the other side, and when he sees a driver like himself, exhausted, stubborn, pushing too hard, he follows them, scares them, keeps them awake until they reach safety. I still see the lights sometimes, late at night on empty highways. Just a glimpse in my peripheral vision. A flash of white in my side mirror that disappears when I look directly at it. And instead of feeling afraid, I whisper, "Thank you, because I know the truth now. Some ghosts don't haunt, they protect." And somewhere on Highway 285, between mile markers 140 and 170, Marcus Webb is still driving, still watching, still trying to save drivers like me from becoming ghosts like him. The headlights that never blink, the guardian of the lonely road.